If you've read the Jaded Duology, you know that I have written this in dual perspectives. So we get both POVs from our leading characters, and we see chapters from Jade and from Roan's perspectives. But I've done it a little bit differently than most people do dual POVs. I actually wrote mine so that we have 2 full-length chapters from Jade and 1 short chapter from Roan before going back to 2 chapters from Jade. And I did this because I knew what I was writing. I knew the entire series that I was creating with this duology. So I knew how this book would end. I knew how the second book would end, ending the entire series. I knew what I was doing, and I knew what big moments were going to happen through the course of the first book and the second book, where we would need to see Roan's perspective. But I didn't want to give him a lot of page time. I really wanted to follow Jade's story with this. But in this story, it's basically a version of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, where Jade is forced to marry Roan. Roan is the son of the commander, and the commander is doing some really shady things. And Jade's father knew this. He's a politician. He works with him. And when Jade was very young, he started a rebellion and got caught. And because the commander couldn't just execute him, he had to do something to pay him back, and it is making Jade marry his son when they come of age, making everyone believe that they like Jade, and then murdering her and making it look like an accident. So we are in this situation where Jade very much is the one telling us the story, but we're going to need to know a little bit of information that Jade doesn't know. We're going to need to see a little bit of things that she's not going to have access to, and that's where Roan comes in. But I also really liked his perspective, and in this story, this is a tiny bit of a spoiler, but he gets some very good scenes. I won't tell you which scenes, but like the scenes that you're waiting for, I really like doing that from his perspective, then getting Jade's reaction. So we are doing this in a way that we are accessing both of their brains, both of their mindsets, and both of those viewpoints. So when they're separate, when they're doing different things, we're getting a lot of confirmation from Roan. At the beginning of the story, and this is just right within those first 3 chapters, we are seeing Jade going into this marriage. She's literally getting married at the beginning of this book, and she has to come to the understanding that this is likely what's happening. She is likely walking into her own assassination, but she doesn't have true confirmation. Roan's first chapter absolutely gives us that confirmation. And that's part of it's not that much of a spoiler because that's in the blurb, but we get like the ultimate confirmation. Yes, this is what's happening. And so throughout the course of the story, Roan's perspective is adding information we can't see from Jade and confirming a lot of what's happening inside of Jade's chapters. So I wanted to give Roan a little bit of a voice, and I wanted to get a little bit of his personality, and I wanted to see a little bit of the switch. Now we know this is enemies to lovers. That is very clear from the blurb of this book. It's enemies to lovers. So at some point, Roan is going to switch over. He very actively is following his father's command, but at some point, he does get convinced to switch over, and I wanted to see that as we were going through it. So for me, instead of doing every other chapter and having full-length chapters for each of them, I very much wanted to focus on Jade's story, what she was doing, how she was doing it, and then use Roan as that confirmation, use Roan as additional information, and use Roan for the fun perspectives that we then get to see Jade's reaction on. And that's how I'll leave that one, but like, you know where I'm going with that one. I like it. It's a fun way to write it. And so with dual perspective, you do not have to follow what we kind of see as those traditional standards with every other chapter. You can do it however you want, as long as there's logic and reasoning and a pattern to it. So we don't want to have like 7 chapters from one character and then a random chapter or 2 from another character. Have specific reasoning and have a pattern so people can follow these things. And then of course, as you're doing dual perspective, when you're designing the physical version of this book, be it ebook or like the physical printed version, but the stuff we're going to see, then we have to be very clear with those chapter headers on whose section is what. So once we fall into the mode of Jade, Roan, Jade, Roan, we're going to start to understand that is coming. That's how it's going to work. Now, another really good thing for dual perspective, if you are writing dual perspective, and we see this a lot in traditional publishing, is to have one in first person and one in third person. You don't have to do that. I didn't do that. I very much like going first person for both of them, but changing up how I was doing things and making it very clear in that first sentence or 2, in that very first paragraph, who is speaking, where we are, what's going on, because we are changing locations sometimes and we're changing who's speaking and who they're with and all these things. So making sure very heavily loading that up front is going to help when it comes to creating a book that people are going to be easily able to follow. So for me, I very much liked doing the back and forth, but giving Jade much more substance in the story than Roan has, at least perspective-wise, but making sure we still have access to those things for all of the different versions of this, all of the different things that are going to pop up, everything that is going to happen, all the good things, all the bad things, all the sad things, all the happy things. We're going to get perspectives from both of them and additional information from each of those characters. So as you're writing your dual perspectives, take those things into consideration and make sure you have a strategy and a pattern to follow, because that way it's going to be more easily consumed by your readers. Now, if you have not read the Jaded Duology and you want to give it a test, it is free, an ebook form on all the major platforms, the first book in the series. It is one that I get a lot of angry DMs about. So if you want your heart ripped out, this is the one. If you want your heart really, 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 really ripped out, the second book is the one in this series. I love you, and I do drink your tears. So you can check out the Jaded Duology. It's a really fun, very fun read. And I've added in a lot of like just beautiful little nods to things that I love and Easter eggs and things that make me happy. And this is one of my heart books. So I highly encourage you to check it out. One chooses life, one chooses death. In the midst of chaos, only one can succeed. I thought I was going to say it backwards, but that's the tagline for it. Such a good book. So I loved it. I still recommend this one. This is my second book published, but this is one of the ones I recommend that everybody reads if they're just starting out with me. So the Jaded Duology and the Conspiracy of Jack Frost are great places to start. You can take a look at how I do my dual perspectives. You can check out how you could potentially be doing that as well. Drop your questions on dual POVs down below and follow along for daily videos helping you navigate the world of publishing, from writing to publishing to marketing to reading my awesome books. I'm here to help you make this your most profitable year ever with the least amount of stress and overwhelm and time commitment as you are creating your content and building up your author brand or your reader brand. We'll see you in the upcoming episodes.